One day you're cleaning out your attic or basement or shed, and among all the other detritus of years gone by, you find a dingy old oil lamp. It looks a little grubby, so you pull down your sleeve and give it a quick rub, and whoops, out pops a genie, turban and all. Grateful to be released, it offers you anything you desire, provided it doesn't violate a handful of rules, like breaking the laws of physics, or removing another person's autonomy, or wishing for infinite wishes. Whatever it is, this singular desire, the genie can make it happen. No conditions, no monkey's paw ironic catches, it just comes true exactly as you imagined it. What do you wish for?
A sandwich!
A sandwich? Dude, I'll just make you a sandwich.
Wishes have been an integral part of basically every culture on this planet for thousands of years.
Life is good, but it can be better.
They take many forms. Prayer is a sort of wish, petitioning a deity or spirit to grant you a boon. But when we call it a wish, this most often is an element of folklore. People wish upon stars, or four-leaved clovers, or lucky pennies dropped into a well. Catching a magical being and demanding them to fulfill a wish is very common in folk and fairy tales, including not just those eponymous fairies, but also leprechauns, talking fish, dragons, and yes, genies. But those wishes very often have ironic twists that undermine them, often to serve as a moral against wishing for treasures above your station. There's the joke that goes, there's three guys on a deserted island. They find a genie in a lamp. The first guy wishes to be home with his wife. The second wishes to be at a luxurious resort. And the third guy, now all alone, wishes his two friends back on the island with him.
And scene.
The musical Into the Woods is structured entirely around this idea. In the first act, all the main characters wish for various things, and by intermission, all the wishes have been granted. But the second act is about what happens after Happily Ever After. What happens after you get your wish and having to deal with the consequences of that.
Careful what you wish for!
One of my favorite instances and also deconstructions of this idea is Disney's own Darby O'Gill and the Little People. Darby is a shrewd old man who still believes in the fair folk, whatever the rest of the town might think of him, and he learns from experience that a caught leprechaun can only grant 3 wishes.
But you wish a 4th one and you lose them all!
So at the end of the movie, when he uses his third and final wish to take his daughter's place in the death coach, the king of the leprechauns, having come to see Darby as a friend, abuses the rules to get the old man out of this scrape.
I wish I could go with you all the way.
I wish you could too.
Darby, you've wished your 4th wish. Goodbye, Darby, me friend.
King Brian is the epitome of chaotic lawful. He's wonderful. Wishes are a foundational part of culture. We have idioms around them, like, if wishes were horses, then peasants would ride. When work or school is stressful or boring, we wish that it were Friday. We wish that absent friends and relatives were with us. We wish for lucrative and satisfying careers. We wish for vacations or pets or toys.
I wish you and your entire family would kiss my ass and be my slaves forever.
Wishes can become the focus of idle conversation, often in the style of would you rather questions, like would you rather have flight or invisibility, or longer arms versus longer legs. People often claim that the trivial answer to what would you wish for is something like world peace or an end to hunger, but that's not really what the folklore wish is for. A wish is personal. It's inherently selfish. It's about what you want for yourself. Wanting a pony is a wish. Wanting an end to capitalism and a socialist revolution, while admirable, is not a wish, at least not in this sense.
Yeah, I guess one of us ought to wish for peace and happiness all over the world.
Wait, what was that?
Hey, these are wishes, not miracles.
Nah, I'm sure it was nothing. But the other end are the nerds trying to quantify how wish granting even works. Like, if genies can't bring people back from the dead, that would require them to know whether or not someone is is dead. So you could, like, ask to speak to Elvis or JFK and see if the conspiracy theories are true. If genies can't kill, well, we can do some tests to see what's lethal.
But you'd be surprised what you can live through.
From how high up does the bowling ball have to drop onto someone's head before the genie refuses to do it? If I wish for my crush to experience a rush of endorphins and serotonin every time they see me, does that count as wishing for them to be in love with me? And at this point, the genie is probably going to tell you to wish for a suck of his dick or he'll chop your legs off. Speaking of, where does the genie, far and away the most enduring example of the wish granter in Western culture, come from? That would be the Middle East. Genie is an Anglo-French version of the Arabic jinn, which is used to describe one or more races of spirits common to Middle Eastern folklore. The origin of both the word and the concept is uncertain, but there are figures from ancient Assyrian religion that are called winged genies, associated with the Aramaic word genya, meaning essentially a guardian angel. In Arabic folklore and later Islamic tradition, jinn became magical spirits kind of halfway between humans and the gods, or after Muhammad, Allah. Sometimes you may find the word Ifrit or Marid to describe an evil jinn, and if you play Dungeons & Dragons, you are probably already familiar with all three of those terms, but in stories featuring them, the words are essentially interchangeable. Jinn, regardless of terminology, crop up a lot in Middle Eastern folklore and can either help or hinder the human characters in stories, and even have sex with and have children with humans. But what about the wish granting? While jinn and their potential precursors could be petitioned for aid, similar to angels or demons in Judeo-Christian cultures, the idea specifically of granting wishes appears to originate with the collection of stories known as the 1001 Nights, often called the Arabian Nights in English. The premise of the anthology is that the Sultan Shahryar, having discovered his wife to be unfaithful, has ordered that each night a new maiden be brought to him only for her to be executed in the morning.
This made a lot of people very angry and has been widely regarded as a bad move.
The vizier's daughter, Scheherazade, decides to do something about this, and with her sister Dunyazad as a co-conspirator, she volunteers as tribute. However, she has a cunning plan and tells the Sultan a really good story, but not the entire thing. Here, Scheherazade perceived the day and was silent. And Dunyazad said to her, "Oh, my sister, what a delightful story is this of thine." "This is nothing," answered Scheherazade, "to what I will tell thee tomorrow night, if the king let me live." Quoth the king to himself, "By Allah, I will not put her to death till I hear the rest of her story, for it is wonderful." And they lay together till the morning. This goes on for 1001 nights, hence the name, by which point the Sultan has fallen in love with Scheherazade and spares her. The structure of the collection is very intricate, with characters within Scheherazade's stories telling their own stories, forming little prose matryoshki. My favorite example of this is the tale of the Hunchback, where the Sultan's favorite jester, a hunchback, is invited to dinner by a tailor, where he chokes to death on a fishbone. The tailor and his wife then play Weekend at Bernie's to try to frame someone else for the manslaughter, and the hunchback's corpse is passed along from person to person until finally someone gets caught, but then they all feel guilty and everyone confesses to the crime in reverse order. So the hangman took the tailor and put the rope around his neck, saying, "I'm tired of taking this man and loosing that." And no one hanged after all. The stories are also filled with a surprising amount of sex and crude humor, as well as plenty of violence, but also songs and poems and philosophy. And of course, quite a few of the stories feature jinn, which seek violent vengeance or transform people into animals, or sometimes grant wishes. And the most famous tale to involve a wish-granting jinn is that of Aladdin, or in English, Aladdin, which is not originally a part of this collection. That's right, the three most famous stories associated with the Arabian Nights, Sinbad the Sailor, Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves, and yes, Aladdin, were not included in the original version of the 1001 Nights. They were added in later by European translators in the 1700s. Aladdin specifically was added by Frenchman Antoine Galland, who heard them from Hannah Diab, a Syrian storyteller. It is unclear whether Diab was retelling an older story or if he invented it himself, but Galland's French translation of the 1001 Nights is the first recorded instance of the Aladdin tale. The premise is the young man Aladdin is Allah's specialist little boy, but is a lazy good-for-nothing, so when a magician comes into town looking for a special boy to open a magic door, Aladdin Aladdin is more than willing to follow him when offered wealth. The magician leads him to the door, Aladdin opens it, and within the vault beyond he finds, among other treasures, an oil lamp, the mystical artifact the magician has been looking for. But Aladdin, laden down with jewels, is unable to get out and refuses to hand it the lamp before being pulled up, so the magician decides to be a sour grapes fox and buries him alive. But Aladdin manages to escape with the lamp back home to his mother. So Aladdin's mother arose and fetched the lamp, but finding it exceeding dirty, she said to him, "Oh, my son, this lamp is dirty, and if we wash it and furbish it, it will sell for a better price." Accordingly, she took a little sand and fell to scouring the lamp withal. But scarce had she begun to rub it when there appeared to her one of the Jinn, foul of favour and monstrous of make as he were of the giants, and said to her, "Say what thou wilt of me. Here am I, thy slave, and the slave of whoso hath in his hand the lamp, and not I alone, but all the slaves of the wonderful lamp that is in thy hand." When she saw his frightful aspect, she trembled, and fear got hold upon her, and her tongue was tied. Nor could she return an answer, for that she was not used to look upon apparitions like unto this. So she fell down a swoon of her terror. Now Aladdin her son was standing afar off, and he had seen the slave of the ring which he had rubbed in the treasure. So when he heard the genie's speech to his mother, he hastened to take the lamp from her hand, and said to him, "O slave of the lamp, I am hungry. My will is that thou bring me somewhat I may eat, and be it somewhat good, past conceit." The genie was absent the twinkling of an eye, and returning, brought him a great costly tray of sheer silver, whereon were 12 platters of various kinds and colors of rich meats, and 2 silver cups and 2 flagons of clarified old wine, and bread whiter than snow, all which he set before him and disappeared. Much like the original version of Beauty and the Beast, Galland's original telling of Aladdin via Diab is rather long and repetitive. We have not one but 2 genies, as was briefly mentioned in that passage, and there is much hullabaloo made about the magician pretending to be Aladdin's uncle and selling all his silverware off to a Jewish merchant, and then Aladdin gets it into his head to marry the princess, and there's a whole subplot where he and the vizier's son are vying for her hand, but eventually using the magic of his genies gets to marry her. The magician then hears of this and comes back to town pretending to be a copper merchant exchanging new lamps for old, and the princess, having not been told about the genie because why would Aladdin tell his wife anything, swaps out the magic lamp for a mundane one. Fortunately for him, Aladdin still has the genie of the ring and eventually gets the lamp back, and everything is right at the end. For whatever reason, the tale of Aladdin has proved exceedingly popular in the United Kingdom, with elements of it popping up in political cartoons, and to this day the panto version of the story is performed basically every year. To those of you who are not deeply familiar with British culture, pantos are plays meant for children with broad comic stereotypes and encouraged audience participation and lots of surprisingly randy jokes.
Now, I know how you will feel about this.
But it's traditional.
It's everyone's favourite bit.
Over the years, the panto version of Aladdin has settled into a sort of canonical form. In particular, the role of Aladdin's mother being given the name Widow Twanky, and always played by a man in drag. The role is so well known in Britain that Ian McKellen really wanted to play her once he was old enough, and play her he has. I will never understand what the hell goes on that island.
I suppose they're going to tell us we can't have Cinderella sucking off the panto horse now.
But Mrs. Edwards has built a contraption that makes it jizz.
That's right.
But hold up, the genies of the ring and the lamp give unlimited wishes to Aladdin or whomever their master may be. Where does the idea of only getting 3 come from? For that, we must return to the original 1001 Nights, specifically the story of the fisherman and the genie. The fisherman pulls up a bottle from the depths, and opening it finds a djinn that's been trapped for so long he has sworn to kill whomever frees him. The fisherman, thinking fast, expresses doubt that the djinn could actually fit his whole giant body in the bottle, and the djinn slips back in to prove his power, at which point the guy slams the stopper back in place. The djinn then begs to be freed again, promising 3 wishes if he is. This idea was then further popularized by the 1940 film The Thief of Baghdad, which is a conglomeration of several stories from and associated with the Arabian Nights, including the fisherman and the genie. In addition, the number 3 is used quite frequently throughout folklore, largely because it allows a beginning, a middle, and an end. Or what one of my high school English teachers would have called a tripartite crescendo. Thus, wishes come in threes.
Uno, dos, tres. No substitutions, exchanges, a refund.
I know, we're gonna talk about that movie, which you're all here for, but first we have to talk about a different film that was very long in production, The Thief and the Cobbler. This movie, the passion project of animator Richard Williams, was in development hell for almost 3 decades. It was originally based on stories about the character Nasreddin, a fool stock character featured in thousands of folklore stories. Williams had been illustrating a picture book based on the stories and felt they merited an animated film adaptation, which was slowly worked on over several years in the 60s and 70s. However, Williams suspected the family who wrote the books of embezzling funds from the animation studio, and they withdrew from the project, taking with them the rights to the character. This forced Williams to change the subject of his film, eventually pulling together various elements from The 1001 Nights. Vincent Price was hired to voice the villainous vizier Zigzag and completed all of his lines in 1973. This does mean he had done voice work prior to Ratigan, contrary to what I said in that video, but The Great Mouse Detective would eventually end up releasing before The Thief and the Cobbler. Williams tried to solicit funding for over a decade, including from a Saudi prince, but was unable to secure any until he was commissioned to handle the animation for Who Framed Roger Rabbit. After that film's resounding success, including 2 Oscars for Williams, Warner Brothers negotiated a deal to finance and release The Thief and the Cobbler. However, Williams had decided that he wanted to make a masterpiece and insisted on not just having fully animated moving backgrounds, a feat that no other animation studio would attempt without the aid of CGI, but also on animating on ones. Most films run at 24 frames per second, and most traditional animation has 12 frames per second, meaning that each frame of animation is used for 2 frames of actual film. This is called animating on twos. Williams decided to animate 1 frame of animation for every frame of film, meaning production would take twice as long as any other animated feature. All of this meant that the film missed deadlines, and Warner Brothers auctioned it off, and the film was finished by a different animation company entirely, no longer overseen by Williams. Eventually, a hastily finished version of the film saw an American release distributed by Miramax, ironically enough owned by Disney. Now, why is this ironic? Why? Because Disney was developing its own animated feature based on Arabian folklore, specifically the tale of Aladdin, and rushed to get it out of the gate before Williams could finish his film.
Somebody stop those pants!
That's right, riding off its popularity as a TV series, DuckTales, the movie Treasure of the Lost Lamp was the first feature produced by Disney's new Movie Tunes studio, roaring into theaters in 1990, where it bombed pretty hard at the box office, but later achieved some success on home video. We've got a genie granting but 3 wishes per person, voiced by a well-known comedian.
Hey, Pops, give me 5. Get down, get back, get real, get a haircut.
Who is this?
And the genie drives a theme of freedom and personhood.
A genie isn't a person. A genie is a thing.
As well as some rudimentary class consciousness.
But golly, everything smells more delicious when you're rich.
Yes, clearly this is the Disney classic we're talking about today.
Major luck.
But seriously, it is very weird how many elements are shared between the DuckTales movie and Aladdin, which would release in theaters 2 years later. Did the feature animation division rip off their TV colleagues, or was this all just a big coincidence?
I think not.
The actual entry in the canon, which is the main topic of the evening, Aladdin, began as the passion project of another artist, Howard Ashman. He wrote up a 40-page treatment of the story, cleaving closely to the original tale with added humor and, of course, musical numbers. But Michael Eisner wasn't really sold on the idea, so Ashman and his collaborator Alan Menken were roped into working on Beauty and the Beast instead. However, once that film was well underway and The Little Mermaid was complete, directors Ron Clements and John Musker chose Aladdin as their next project, with Linda Wolverton writing the screenplay. Ashman managed to write the lyrics for 6 songs for the movie before his death from AIDS complications in 1991. Of those, only 3 made it into the finished film. Looking into the production of this movie, it seems like it was kind of hell. In 1991, with about a year and a half to go before release, Jeffrey Katzenberg was presented with a story reel of the film, which he hated. Without rescheduling the release date, Jeffy Boy ordered a full rewrite, bluntly telling everyone involved that they didn't need to hold any reverence for Howard Ashman's version, even though he had literally just died the month before. In particular, he demanded the removal of Aladdin's mother father saying, 86 the mother, the mom's a 0. This was a big deal because it meant the corresponding removal of Aladdin's big ballad, Proud of Your Boy.
Bad as I've been, Mom, you're in for a pleasant surprise.
This song would later be restored to the production when Aladdin was turned into a Broadway musical in 2011. But for now, with half of Ashman's songs nixed, replacements needed to be written, and Tim Rice was brought on to make new lyrics. In addition, Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio were hired to write a new screenplay. Aladdin also marks the first time Disney cast different voice actors for speaking and singing. That is, the first time they admitted it. Ava Gabor was singing in the rain for her parts in Everybody Wants to Be a Cat by Roby Lester.
If you want to turn me on.
And Frank Welker mimicked George C. Scott for his stirring rendition of an American classic. But neither of them were credited. For Aladdin, the titular character's dialogue was handled by Scott Weinger, later of Full House fame, and his belting by Brad Kane. Both of them were still in high school at the time, and that's because Aladdin was originally envisioned as being in his early teens, but with the rewrite, he was aged up to be 18 to 20-ish. Jeff really wanted a sexy prince this time around, so Aladdin's look was based off of Calvin Klein models and Tom Cruise, but his wardrobe had a different inspiration.
Hammer time.
Hammer in his just energetic movement, especially in the You Can't Touch This. We watched that constantly, and it really inspired the artist to get that kind of action in the opening sequence where Aladdin is running through the streets.
That's right, Glenn Keane is here to work his magic once more. Jasmine was drawn by Mark Henn, who for the first time got to work on a princess all by himself. Apparently, he based her look off of his sister.
So I pulled that out and I looked at it and I thought, you know, that's a pretty good. She's about the right age when the photograph was taken, and kind of the dark hair, dark eyebrows and things that we were kind of looking for.
Her speech was provided by Linda Larkin, who hasn't really done anything else notable, while her singing was done by Lee Salonga, who was fresh off an award-winning performance in Miss Saigon.
So I'm just trying to picture flying, and I just try to sound happy.
Salonga is also the only person of color in the voice cast, which is something we'll dig a little deeper into shortly. The first animator brought on board for Aladdin was a newcomer at Disney, Eric Goldberg. As such, he got to have an outsized influence on the look of the project, taking a lot of inspiration from caricaturist Al Hirschfeld.
Hirschfeld's work was a major influence because his stuff is so curvy and sinuous that I thought it would be the perfect marriage of character and environment.
This informed the backgrounds, the character designs, and even the line work of the touch-up artists.
And as we were redrawing every single scene, we had to make sure that the curves and the thick and thin flowing lines were in every single drawing. When we would clean up a drawing in traditional animation, it would be one beautiful flowing line. In Aladdin, because of the thick and thin, we have to do a second pass on every single line, so that it starts off thin, thickens in the middle, and ends up thin again.
And the curviest character of all was the one Goldberg himself worked on, the Genie. Goldberg, in fact, auditioned for this job by animating a stand-up routine of Robin Williams, because this other Williams, unrelated, was always the voice Disney had in mind for their Genie. Now, Disney had done stunt casting before, as we've discussed, but this was one of their biggest swings ever at this point, particularly since Robin agreed to take standard SAG pay as long as Disney didn't overuse him in their advertising. Let's put a pin in that. For now, let us journey into the exotic Arabian desert as our story begins.
Where it's flat and immense and the heat is intense. It's barbaric, but hey, it's home.
Woof! So, first off, yes, that lyric was written by Howard Ashman. No one is perfect. And second, it was originally worse. The original line was, where they cut off your ear if they don't like your face, it's barbaric, but hey, it's home. This peeved off the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee, who lobbied for the change, which made its way into every subsequent release. But even the part that remained, it's barbaric, but hey, it's home, isn't great. Like, I get it, cutesy joke, but it is a prime example of a concept this movie is rather blasé about, Orientalism. That word comes from the Latin word for east. That's where the verb to orient yourself comes from. You figure out which way the sun is rising, i.e. the east, and ta-da, you know your directions. And the Roman Empire and its successors called everything east of them the Orient.
How about Sunrise Land?
Now, as most of you are probably aware, this covers a wide variety of cultures and peoples, but to Western Europeans, particularly during the height of colonialism and imperialism, anything beyond the borders of Europe was foreign, exotic, and uncivilized. See my The Jungle Book video for more detail on that topic. I'm also planning to devote an entire future video to the related concept of cultural appropriation, which was also very popular in Europe and the Americas at the time. But for our purposes, Orientalism is the practice of viewing anything not of your culture as strange and alien, and using hallmarks of those foreign cultures as ways to signify otherness, exoticness. Using the papyrus font in a movie poster, for instance, makes you think of calligraphy from the Middle East and automatically puts you in the mind of something not of your Western culture. This is also done with music. I am skeptical that Alan Menken studied with actual Arab composers to make sure his score was authentic to the place and time. He is instead evoking what he perceived as the vibe of Middle Eastern music while still remaining firmly in the Western harmonic and rhythmic system. Orientalism also shows up in the character designs. Aladdin and Jasmine, the heroes, have much more Caucasian features and were in fact based off of specific white people. Our villain Jafar, by contrast, has a big old nose and a curly little goatee and looks much more stereotypically Arab. It's even worse for Gazim.
I had to slit a few throats, but I got it.
And remember that, apart from Jasmine's singing voice, all of the voice actors were white, as were the writers and directors and animators.
Everyone in the kingdom
Mostly Welsh.
You're very right.
You know, mostly Welsh.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating is that the original story was itself orientalizing. Hanadiab set his tale in China as a way to make it seem exotic and foreign, but he's still called the ruler of the land the Sultan rather than the emperor, and everyone has Arabic names. The evil magician is also foreign, hailing from the Maghreb and having dark skin, indicating his evil to the audience, whether Middle Eastern or European. Now, does this orientalizing detract from the movie itself? To be honest, yes, it does. However, it is nowhere near as egregious as some of Disney's earlier, choices. But I do think that, similar to those earlier films, it would be a good idea to talk to a child watching this movie for the first time about the stereotypes present and why they can be construed as offensive and should no longer be used. At the very least, Disney did better than Richard Williams, who decided to draw the eunuchs in his film in a blackface minstrel style. Yikes. But that's not to say white creators should not be allowed to depict other cultures. The point is to do so respectfully with the input of the cultures you are depicting. And Disney has gotten better at this. Mulan came out only a few years later and had Asian actors for a lot of the voice cast, and actually had a research trip to China to ensure accuracy. By contrast, the Aladdin team went to an expo put on by the Saudi government at the Los Angeles Conference Center. Though to be fair, this was during the first Gulf War, and a trip to Iraq was not gonna happen. Speaking of, the setting of the film was changed from Baghdad to the fictional Agrabah entirely because of the Gulf War. Jeffy Boy didn't want audiences thinking Aladdin was buddies with Saddam Hussein. So after the opening, slightly racist song, we settle into not Iraq as Robin Williams invites us in close to hear his tale.
Too close, a little too close.
This bit is largely an excuse for Robin to ad-lib some jokes, but also introduces one of the themes of this film.
A young man who liked this lamp was more than what he seemed.
Which is kind of ironic given how the heroes are conventionally attractive and the villain looks like a slur made flesh.
Tonight, the part of Al will be played by a tall, dark, and sinister, ugly man.
But in this particular case, the film is more concerned with class differences, as we shall see. In the meantime, let's check in with that villain. Jafar, animated by Andreas Deja, is deliberately drawn differently from the rest of the cast. And I don't just mean the permanent snarl on his face. Every other character is smooth curves, orientally evoking the domes and arches of Islamic architecture. Jafar, by contrast, is a pointy rectangle. Our vizier is also the most obvious commonality between the Disney film and The Thief and the Cobbler. Richard Williams was a bit more eclectic in his references to The 1001 Nights, largely telling a new story rather than adapting an existing one, with a heavy focus on some golden balls.
The balls are gone!
But it's hard to look at Jafar and Zigzag and not start sliding into your tinfoil hat. Both films have an oily, sycophantic vizier for the villain, intent on usurping the throne, and both of them have a bird sidekick.
Look at this! Look at this! I'm so ticked off that I'm molting!
Like, Katzenberg, and really everyone involved in the making of Aladdin, knew what Richard Williams was working on. They had likely seen in-progress storyboards and rough animation as they were shopped around when Williams was looking for investors, and guess what Eric Goldberg had been doing before he started working for Disney? He worked for Richard Williams! And his very first project with Disney was to work on the Arabian Nights-inspired tale, serving as a direct competitor to his former boss's film. Now, to be fair, Williams has never accused Disney of any foul play as far as I'm aware, and certainly there was never a lawsuit or anything like that. But it's still not the best look. Okay, I have thus far been rather harsh on this film, but I think it's important to be critical, even of things we like or think are good. It's important to be able to recognize flaws and to learn from them and to do better next time. Because apart from the apparent corporate piracy and the racism,
you can excuse racism.
This is a well-acted, well-written, and just gorgeous-looking film. While The Beauty and the Beast is a fantastic film with fantastic animation, there are certainly moments where it seems the animators were still getting the hang of using caps. That is not the case here. The animation of Aladdin is sleek, perfectly incorporating all elements of every shot, apart from some PlayStation-era CGI that has not aged particularly well. And that sleekness is showcased exquisitely in the scarab pendant chase that opens the film proper, with Jafar and Gazim racing across the nighttime desert to the Cave of Wonders. Having unlocked his rightmost location in Villainous, Jafar urges Gazim inside. This does not go well.
That's an incredible... I think I'm gonna have a heart attack and die from that surprise.
Lest we forget, Disney hired 2 famous comedians as part of their stunt casting, and Gilbert Gottfried is just as iconic as Robin Williams.
He's the only parrot with a full set of choppers in his mouth, because you can't have Gilbert Gottfried's voice coming out and not see those big teeth.
Will Finn, fresh off of animating Cogsworth, tackles Iago, and he and Andreas Deja manage to make the bird and the vizier a very compelling pair.
All this for a loaf of bread?
Disney's iteration of Aladdin is once again Allah's specialist little boy.
Diamond in the rough.
And while he's drop-dead gorgeous, he's also clothed in rags and forced to find extra legal means to feed himself.
Gotta eat to live, gotta steal to eat, tell you all about it when I got the time.
This, naturally, gets him in a spot of trouble with the law. Speaking of the law, this film is the first time we hear the sultry tones of Jim Cummings.
You idiots! We've all got swords!
While Frank Welker is typically hired to make animal noises, here he voices Abu and Raja, Jim is enlisted to cover every register of the male human voice. He has been in basically every animated TV show in the 80s and 90s, and we will be hearing him quite frequently in the films to come. Here, the song One Jump Ahead is a fun little number, introducing our protagonist, very effectively informing us of his position in not Baghdad. He's at the very bottom of the social ladder, forced to scavenge for scraps trickled down by those above him. As ever, it always comes back to class.
You are a worthless street rat.
But he knows that the system is unfair, and these first few scenes with Aladdin show us that he's both kind and clever, and knows that he's more than the label thrown at him by society.
Riff-raff, street rat. I don't buy that.
He is saddled with a lot in life due to the happenstances of his birth, a whole lot of nothing. And he, like every Disney Renaissance protagonist, wants more. And his escape from the guards shows us a quick wit that could be put to better use, though I do like the foreshadowing of the flying carpet here. And also, Crazy Hakim's discount fertilizer absolutely deserves a Lorcana card. As Aladdin yearns to be rich and privileged, we cut to the place of riches and privilege, the palace, where Princess Jasmine's tiger Raja has just chased off another suitor.
I've never been so insulted.
Where Aladdin feels unsupported and abandoned by a neglectful system, Jasmine feels smothered and overmanaged. She wants to make literally any meaningful choice in her life, but she's being forced to marry within some arbitrary time limit.
The law says you must be married to a prince by your next
birthday.
The filmmakers deliberately wanted to avoid actually specifying anyone's age in this film, allowing the audience to read Aladdin and Jasmine as either teenagers or young adults, so that either age group could relate to them. This scene also has one of the most on-the-nose metaphors ever put to film.
Well, I just want to make sure you're taken care of. Provided for.
Gee, I wonder what the birds mean!
Her mother wasn't nearly so picky.
Douglas Seal voices the Sultan, having previously portrayed the gay-as-hell koala in Rescuers Down Under, and he is just an utter delight. And while yes, the film is orientalized to all hell, some of that does service the setting, and the Sultan shouting,
Praise Allah!
all the time helps ground the movie in an Islamic society. This particular touch feels less like Orientalism and more like thoughtfulness. Like, yeah, the Sultan would not be saying, Jesus Christ, he would be saying something more fitting. Now, this isn't always followed through on, we'll be talking about the genie and his pop culture references soon enough, but I appreciate this little touch here. Our adorable little schlub, however, is soon interrupted by our oily vizier and his parrot.
Your Majesty certainly has a way with dumb animals.
Now, y'all know me. I love it when a story's villain ties into the themes of the story, and Jafar's hypnotism of the Sultan plays directly into the idea of freedom of choice. Jafar is all about dominating others, forcing them to do what he wants, removing their ability to choose, which puts him in opposition to our three leads who each in their own way yearn for freedom. This is good writing, people.
Write that down, write that down!
Speaking of our leads, Jasmine absconds from the palace, wanting at least one day living under her own terms in the city proper. While she does this, Aladdin once again demonstrates his cleverness by using Abu as a distraction to steal a melon. As he gorges himself on literal forbidden fruit, he espies the princess in disguise who is discovering the wonders of the marketplace.
Fresh fish! We catch them, you buy them!
One of those wonders is how capitalism works.
You'd better be able to pay for that.
Now, while cutting off the hand of a thief is an attested practice in the Muslim world, including some current countries, historically this would A, not have been carried out by the merchant himself. The medieval Muslim world had laws and courts and things like that, and B, not have been called for in the theft of a single apple.
In Delaware, we've always had trial by jury.
This is a clear example of Orientalism, with the filmmakers working off of hearsay rather than actual research.
It's barbaric, but hey, it's home.
That said, the more immediate threat of a sword about to be brought down does raise the stakes very effectively, making Jasmine all the more grateful when Aladdin intervenes.
She thinks the monkey is the Sultan.
For a third time, Aladdin's cleverness is demonstrated, and this time we see Jasmine's intelligence as well as she quickly cottons onto the ruse.
Oh, hello, Doctor. How are you?
No, not that one.
But this entire interaction is yet another showcase of class disparity. Would the merchant have been so quick to chop a hand off if he'd known Jasmine was the princess? And Jasmine herself demonstrates the disparity by being so insulated by privilege that she doesn't really know what money is. She just assumes, based on her limited experience in immense luxury, that everyone is just always provided with everything they need, and she is very quickly disabused of that notion. As our breeding pair for the evening get acquainted, Jafar uses some magic nonsense to divine whom the diamond in the rough might be, which for some reason requires Iago to work a treadmill.
Yes, almighty evil one!
Once he figures out it's Aladdin, he sends the palace guard with a polite invitation.
They're after me! They're after you?
Luckily, our boy has a plan.
Do you trust me?
What?
Do you trust me?
Yes.
Remember that, while they still end up getting captured, it is a key character moment for the both of them. Following this, we get to see Jafar interacting with our two mains for the first time. First, cruelly lying to Jasmine and telling her her new boyfriend is dead, which distresses her.
So, how did it go?
And then visiting Aladdin in the dungeon in disguise to give him a pep talk.
You're only a fool if you give up, boy.
After which our villain states out loud with his literal mouth 2 of the 3 thesis statements of this film.
Whoever has the gold makes the rules. Things aren't always what they seem.
This is a movie about class disparity. This is a movie about appearances being deceiving, and it takes almost every opportunity to hammer those themes home. Jafar is rich, but pretends to be poor to deceive the poor Aladdin into doing his dirty work. Aladdin, despite his impoverished appearance, has a rich inner life and proves more adept, hardworking, and quick-thinking than any of his supposed superiors who happened to be born into wealth and privilege. And that class system that relies so heavily on appearance over substance removes freedom of choice from basically everyone, including the people ostensibly in charge. It is only by escaping this system that we regain our freedom. Jafar does so by abusing the rules to manipulate events in his favor at the expense of the freedom of others, while Aladdin tries to break free from the rules entirely at multiple points, but is only successful when he lucks into a windfall in the shape of a magic lamp. But I'm getting ahead of the story a bit. For some reason, the Sand Tiger Cave likes the sexy thief more than the borderline racist caricature thief, and Aladdin descends into the treasure hoard where he meets the magic carpet. Well, technically, Abu meets it first. While not present in the original Aladdin tale, the flying carpet has featured in many folklore traditions, including the 1001 Nights. For the Disney film, while the outline of the carpet was hand animated, the pattern on its surface was tracked via CGI based off a flat design. That design incorporates elements from the entire plot of the film.
So this is the final design of the carpet, which has the magic lamps all encircled in the center and the tiger's head in the corners with some flames that represent a certain portion of the film as well.
Animated by Randy Cartwright, the carpet is a triumph of the medium, expressing a diverse array of emotions without a voice or even a face.
I can't believe it. I'm losing to a rug.
The entire Cave of Wonders sequence adheres surprisingly close to the original story, including the steps up to the raised dais singularly holding the magic lamp. What is different is failing to heed the warning not to touch the treasure, and when Abu grabs a ruby the size of a pineapple, shit hits the fan. With the added tension of the cavern collapsing around them, Aladdin, Abu, and the carpet flee for the exit, and just like in Diab's tale, Jafar refuses to help our boy up unless he hands over the lamp. Luckily for our hero, this time around he has a sidekick to steal the lamp back.
Why, you hairy little thief.
With nothing better to do, Aladdin gives the lamp a bit of a polish, thus 35 minutes into the movie, we finally meet our third lead.
10,000 years will give you such a crick in the neck!
So, human history has not even lasted 10,000 years. There's a meme that any fantasy or sci-fi writer, when coming up with a history for their made-up world, should drop a 0 from their farthest back event, because 10,000 years is a colossal span of time. 10,000 years ago, the first farmers in Mesopotamia had almost figured out how pottery worked. If we're assuming Aladdin takes place in the Islamic Golden Age, that's a further 1,000 years back, and you can forget about clay brick houses. Humans were living in caves or teepees. That's a solid 5,000 to 6,000 years before the first invention of writing, which, being the most lasting way to keep records, is a solid boundary line between history and pure archaeology. So if Robin Williams is talking about 10 to 11,000 years before now, then he was granting wishes to grunting bipeds with stone clubs wearing animal skins and finger painting in caves. They certainly were not working brass or even copper into oil lamps.
I must have hit my head harder than I thought.
This, along with Genie's many references to cultural touchstones of the 80s and 90s, has led many on the internet to theorize that Aladdin is actually post-apocalyptic, taking place 10,000 years into the far future. Somehow, Islam survived that long, and the rest of humanity has long been trampled under the inexorable heat of climate change, leaving behind only a holographic wish-granting AI trapped inside a skeuomorphic vessel, probably invented by some Silicon Valley tech bro.
The struggle to breathe life into a painting or a drawing. Even a genie can't do that for you.
For more about my thoughts on the current state of AI, please see my Winnie the Pooh video. But at the end of the day, it is a throwaway line, likely ad-libbed by Robin Williams, and what matters is less the placing of this fairy tale on some historical timeline, and more what actually happens in the film. And after a toe-tapping number about what a good friend a genie can be,
I'm on the job, you big nabob.
Aladdin finally understands what's going on.
That's right, he can be taught.
However, unlike Diab's Tale, the film wants to have actual tension and stakes, and thus there is not only the limit of but 3 wishes per person, but also some other rules.
There are a few provisos, a couple of quid pro quos.
No killing, no seduction, no necromancy. But Aladdin, ever a clever little shit, takes a leaf out of the fisherman's bottle and tricks Genie into getting them out of the cave without using a wish.
Well, I feel sheepish.
In the meantime, Jafar is getting chastised for a little bit of extrajudicial execution and is looking for a way to usurp the Sultan without the lamp.
What if you were the chump husband?
What?
Okay, so Andreas Deja is gay. He often infuses the characters he animates with a, shall we say, extravagance. And voice actor Jonathan Freeman is also gay, and his performance oozes with, shall we say, flair.
I love the way your foul little mind works.
Jafar is one of the most heavily queer-coded villains in a rogues gallery full of camp icons. So pardon me if I'm not particularly convinced that this man legitimately wants to marry a lady. However, he and Iago having a laugh-off gives me joy.
How about that, Mr. Doubting Mustafa?
Having brought Aladdin to a verdant oasis, Genie presses him to get wishing already. But our hero isn't really sure what exactly he wants, so he turns to his new blue friend and asks him.
What would you wish for? Me?
This is why Aladdin is Allah's specialist little boy. This is why Aladdin is the only person allowed inside the giant sand tiger mouth. This is why Aladdin is the person destined to recover the lamp, because he is the only person who sees the genie as a person, not as a thing, not as a slave, but as a person with thoughts and hopes and dreams of his own. And what does the genie want?
Freedom.
Turns out the life of a genie, not so great.
Phenomenal cosmic powers!
Itty-bitty living space.
All 3 of our leads feel robbed of their freedom in different ways.
Sometimes you feel so...
You're just
trapped.
Aladdin is technically the most free, not confined to any one location, but because of that, doesn't have a real home. He doesn't have any security, and with that, the freedom to make actual choices about his life. He can't enter the marketplace without being harassed. He certainly can't enter the palace. He can't choose to get a pet tiger or a collection of ceramic animal figurines. All he can realistically do is steal to eat, because who would ever give a street rat a job? Jasmine, while living in immense luxury, is imprisoned both by her privilege and by her gender, forced by law to be married so that her husband can become sultan. Her every want and need is catered to, provided none of those wants or needs involve leaving her ivory tower or interacting with any person who isn't her father, her future husband, or a servant. Meanwhile, the genie is literally a servant bound by magic to fulfill the wishes of whomsoever holds his prison. He appears to be omnipotent, able to bend reality to his whim, and yet the reality is that he can only do so at the whim of another. This film very neatly and effectively ties together the 3 themes of freedom, deceptive appearances, and class disparity in the arcs of its 3 main characters. All 3 appear at first blush to be free, but upon closer inspection, because of where they rank in the class hierarchy, are trapped, and each one needs to find their freedom by the end of the movie.
What is it you want most?
Not wanting to get too bogged down with existential dread, Genie instead dissociates like an adult by changing the subject back to Aladdin's wishes. They figure out that our street rat is in love with the princess, but since the genie can't force her to love him, what they can do is make him a prince himself, or at least make him appear to be one.
That fez and vest combo is much too 3rd century.
I've been going on about this movie for current timestamp amount of minutes, and I haven't even mentioned that Thomas Schumacher is back as the producer. And he also is gay. And during production, at one point, Jeff Katzenberg approached him asking if all the gay jokes Robin Williams was making during his improv was okay. Thomas took this in stride, saying that the, quote, squishy fashion designer is a cliche for a reason, and that the jokes all seemed to be in good fun, which I would agree with. I also love that this wish takes time to manifest. It isn't instant. Genie experiments with the outfit and what kind of mount to turn Abu into.
still not enough.
It's far more interesting and entertaining than the usual just snap your fingers and it happens. Meanwhile, Jafar, for what I can only imagine are purely political reasons, is trying to convince the Sultan to make Jasmine marry him.
But you're so old.
Before this can go much farther, trumpets are heard anon, and up saunters Aladdin in the guise of Prince Ali at the head of a parade and a big musical number.
Are you gonna love this guy?
It is one of my life goals to one day Ferris Bueller a show tune down a busy city street, and I don't think I'm alone in that.
Fabulous, Harry. I love the feathers.
Also, who can forget?
He's got 95 white birds and monkeys. He's got the monkeys. Let's see the monkeys.
The parade sings its way right into the palace to the delight of the Sultan.
He's delighted too.
Ecstatic.
Seeking to ingratiate himself with his future father-in-law, Aladdin lets the Sultan ride the carpet to Iago's dismay.
I heard the writers had a sign on the wall that said, "When in doubt, hurt the parrot."
This whole scene is a lot of fun, with a lot of good back and forth between the characters.
Oh, much farther than you've traveled, I'm sure.
Try me.
Nonsense. One thing I pride myself on, Jafar, I'm an excellent judge of character.
Sure, that's why you hired your vizier from Clearly Evil Incorporated. This is one instance where the book is exactly what it says on the cover.
No, I don't know what I expected.
Of course, this being the 90s, we need some 90s girl power feminism.
I am not a prize to be won.
This might seem a little silly now, but lest we forget, before 1974, women in the US could not own a credit card, and before 1970, women couldn't divorce their husband without a reason compelling enough to convince a likely male judge. This would have been well within the living memory of most of the people who worked on this film. So yeah, Jasmine, you tell those men, you go girl.
Good for her.
So Aladdin is now inside the palace, only a balcony away from the lust of his life. The genie has done all he can, and now Aladdin just has to stick the landing. He has to woo the princess under his own power, but now he has no idea what to say.
Tell her the truth!
This is why we don't catfish, kids. It can be fun to pretend to be someone else in order to get with a hottie, but once you're actually in the weeds trying to have a conversation with an actual person, it's gonna come crumbling down. What do you say to someone you actually like when you're trying to maintain a facade?
You really ought to be yourself.
Hey, that's the last thing I want to be.
Aladdin is still trapped. It's just now he's trapped in this idea of what he thinks Jasmine wants. Part of that anxiety is well-founded. She is, after all, a princess, and there is a law saying only a prince can marry her. But he doesn't actually know Jasmine as a person. He doesn't know what she actually wants, and so he pretends to be everything she hates.
How do I look?
Like a prince.
But like with most catfishing, the facade starts to melt pretty fast when met with literally any resistance. Jasmine wants nothing to do with another stuffy royal with his head up his ass, and that's all she sees under the swagger and fancy turban. She is once again judging Aladdin by appearances, but this time by his pretense rather than his reality. It's only after he lets his guard down and starts acting like his usual self that she starts to be more receptive.
Do you trust me?
Yes.
A Whole New World is glorious. Disney has always done flying scenes the best, and this is no exception. For the first time in either of their lives, Aladdin and Jasmine experience actual freedom.
No one to tell us no or where to go.
They soar, tumble, and freewheel across the ancient world and shut the fuck up about physics. The carpet is magic. It doesn't need to obey the sound barrier. This is a fairy tale. It's a Santa situation. Just let go of the need to actually, for fucking once in your life, Neil deGrasse Tyson, and just enjoy the art. Suspend your disbelief and let yourself be whisked away through an endless diamond sky. Also, see Jasmine's reaction to the bit with the apple? She's no dummy. You can't catfish her.
Did you think I was stupid?
No!
That I wouldn't figure it out?
You know, if Aladdin had come fully clean here, admitted that he was the street rat and nothing more, Jasmine probably would have fully gone along with the facade. She'd already shown she was game for it.
Oh, hello, Doctor. How are you?
And she was fully willing to get busy with a hot homeless guy. But no, Aladdin is still convinced he has to pretend, terrified of what might happen if he's actually fully honest with someone for once, and concedes only that he's the guy she met in the marketplace, but a royal in disguise, just like she was. She's still skeptical, but convinced enough for her to give him what might be the earliest kiss a romantic couple shares in one of these movies. Like, previously they only snog at her immediately prior to their wedding. Of course, our villain isn't going to take this lying down, and Jafar orders the guards to chuck Prince Abubu off a cliff. This plot beat seems to exist entirely to waste Aladdin's second wish. I guess the writers couldn't really think of a better way to winnow him down to only one. Either way, our boy returns to confront the vizier and finally point out all the hypnotism and domineering and whatnot, forcing Jafar to make a tactical retreat.
And how about this picture? I don't know, I think I'm making a weird face in it.
But Jafar caught a glimpse of the lamp, which means he knows Ali is Aladdin, and all he has to do is a little light thievery of his own to get his extra long fingers on the genie. But now, with but one wish left, Aladdin finds himself unable to keep his promise to Genie, feeling he has to hold on to this power in order to maintain the facade. His ascent to the upper class literally comes at the expense of another's freedom. This movie is just chock full of on-the-nose metaphors.
After all, you've lied to everyone else. Hey, I was beginning to feel left out.
This falling out gives Iago the perfect opportunity to slip in and steal the lamp.
You got a problem, Pinky?
From here, we move pretty rapidly into the climax. Jafar uses his wishes to become the Sultan, then a sorcerer, exposes Aladdin for the fraud he is before sending him to the ends of the earth. Because Aladdin couldn't bring himself to free the genie, because he didn't do the right thing, because he was so anxious about preserving the lie that got him everything he'd always wanted. Jafar is able to take everything away, not just from him, but everyone else.
Abject humiliation.
Honestly, I think this is a much more effective demonstration of the perils of lies than Pinocchio's nose growing. Here we see not just a magical metaphor, but actual consequences. The people you love getting hurt. But Aladdin resolves to fix his mistakes, and he confronts Jafar, whose ascent to power has made him descendant to puns.
Perhaps you'd like to see how snake-like I can be. I'm just getting warmed up. Get the point?
You fight like a dairy farmer.
But in the end, it is not Aladdin's strength or dexterity that wins the day, but his wit, successfully convincing Jafar to become an all-powerful genie himself.
Phenomenal cosmic powers! Itty-bitty living space.
The villain is defeated, and Aladdin has one wish left. He can use it to become a prince once more so that he can be with Jasmine. And what does he wish for?
Genie, you're free.
Our boy finally follows through, proving himself the diamond in the rough, and in the end, he doesn't do it out of guilt or obligation. He makes the wish with a smile on his face. What he truly wants, with his whole heart, is for his friend to be free. Now that moral character doesn't go unnoticed, and it seems there's a law that needs changing.
Well, am I Sultan or am I Sultan?
Our two lovebirds fly off into the full moon with a final reprise of their duet, The End. And having come to the end, seeing our story through, you must revisit our initial question.
What would you wish for?
I don't know. I never thought I'd get this far.
Disney certainly got what they wished for. Aladdin did gangbusters at the box office, raking in just over $500 million in its initial release, and became the first animated film since Snow White to be the top-grossing movie of its year.
Impromptu movie review I heard one day in my car. I was listening to a phone-in psychologist talk show, and someone called in very, very depressed, and the psychologist said, "Go see Aladdin! It's the funniest movie you've ever seen!" And he went into this rave review. And I thought, well, boy, it doesn't get better than that people are actually prescribing it as an antidote for depression.
And for good reason. It's wildly entertaining with phenomenal vocal performances, and at its core is a lot of heart.
I'm gonna miss you. Me too, Al.
But remember that pin about Robin Williams' contract? How out of goodwill for the success of Good Morning Vietnam, he had agreed to the SAG pay rate of $75,000 rather than the millions he was worth, on the condition that they not use his name in marketing nor have his character, the genie, take up more than a quarter of any promotional material. Well, Disney followed the letter, but certainly not the spirit of that deal. The genie took up exactly 25% of every poster that featured him, with every other character made minuscule in comparison, and Robin's vocal performance was used extensively in TV and radio ads. While they were legally not allowed to name him, it was pretty clear to anyone listening that it was their favorite comedian. Robin's response to this was to joke, "You realize when you work for Disney why the mouse is only 4 fingers, because he can't pick up a check." Robin had wished for Disney not to use his likeness for marketing to sell cheap toys and plastic shit. He was fully game to lend his voice for an animated film he could show his children, but he wanted nothing to do with all the corporate materialist garbage surrounding it. And because Disney under Michael Eisner and Jeffrey Katzenberg cared only about money, Robin didn't get his wish. Richard Williams wished to see his passion project through to the end to complete his artistic vision for The Thief and the Cobbler the way he had imagined it. But because of capitalism, because studios were so unwilling to fund such ambition, and because Disney rushed to get out their Aladdin ahead of his film, his life's work, a film he had spent literal decades making, was wrested away from him. There's at least a somewhat happy ending there, though. Fans and animators who worked on the film have since come together to preserve cut portions of the movie and slowly restore Williams' original vision. Called the Recobbled Cut, it is a clear labor of love, having gone through many iterations, each improving on the last, using rediscovered footage, in-progress work cuts, and even brand new animation in places. It might not be what Williams truly wanted, but it is a fascinating piece of art in its own right and absolutely worth a watch. Disney has built its entire brand around the concept of wishes being granted.
I'm wishing, I'm wishing.
The Disney company has used When You Wish Upon a Star as its theme song since 1954, a mere 14 years after it won the Oscar for Best Song. While in their films, this is often very earnest and sincere, showing the ambition and perseverance of the protagonists.
A dream is a wish your heart made.
The corporate wing of the company has turned it into a money-making machine. Come on down to Disney World, where all your dreams come true.
And with you, I tell you, sweetheart, I'm going to Disneyland.
Pay us oodles of money to act as fairy godmothers to your children. No childhood is complete without a trip to our corporate-approved, sanitized beyond recognition theme park experience, where your little ones can hug a minimum wage worker inside a massive felt costume.
A couple of rodents looking for a theme park.
Don't get me wrong, there's some fun rides and the performers are usually impeccably on point. There are entire YouTube videos just of the cast members slaying as their characters. But Disney keeps ratcheting up the price year after year, and as the company grows larger and larger and its output has grown safer and safer, Disney is starting to feel more and more like the caricature Jeff Katzenberg would later bring to life in his hideously petty way in Shrek.
Shine your shoes, wipe your face.
Disney has even drunk a bit of its own Kool-Aid with the self-indulgent Wish, which we will be discussing in due time. The corporate machine that Walt founded over 100 years ago has become a parody of itself, trying desperately to convince audiences that it is the ultimate authority on childhood entertainment, the sole grantor of wishes to an American public that increasingly cannot afford to visit. You know who does get their wishes granted? The rich. I know, I harp on about the wealthy all the damn time on this channel, but for good reason.
Whoever has the gold makes the rules.
If a rich person wishes for something, whether that be a yacht or a mansion or a mail-order bride or a tax cut or the repealing of a regulatory law, they usually get it. For the rich, it's barely even wishing. Wishing implies a yearning, a desire for something you know you can never truly have, yet you still hope for, hoping that something somewhere out there will hear your plea and answer it. The rich just have to swipe their credit card and it'll be mailed to them express within 24 hours. And those wishes don't come out of thin air. The wealth with which the rich wish inevitably comes at the expense of the poor, in wages not paid to workers, in pollution not regulated, and social services not provided so that the wealthy need not pay taxes. Like Gazim had to slit a few throats to get Jafar his wish, the power that the rich hoard for themselves is paid for in the blood of the poor. There is an often repeated saying that power corrupts. This is often used as the moral in stories about wishes. The fisherman's wife keeps asking for more and more ridiculous things from the talking fish, becoming corrupted by the power she wishes for, before the fish finally takes everything back when she wishes to be God. This is such a pervasive idea, telling people to keep their heads down and not make wishes above their station, otherwise they'll get corrupted and become just like all those shitty rich people. But I don't think that's true. I'm more inclined to agree with Robert Caro, a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and biographer who retorts, "What power always does is reveal. When a guy gets into a position where he doesn't have to worry anymore, then you see what he wanted to do all along." What did Jafar want to do? He wanted to dominate, to humiliate everyone he felt had wronged him, enslave the entire kingdom to his whims, letting him sit on top of a pillow of privilege.
Jafar, he's our man if he can't do it.
Right! What did Aladdin want to do? At first, he just wanted the chance to talk to his crush, but in the end, he wanted freedom. Freedom for himself, freedom for his girlfriend, freedom for his friends, freedom to make their own choices, freedom to live the lives they want to live. And if we really look hard at it, most wishes people make are for that freedom of choice. We wish for good-paying jobs so we don't have to worry about rent or bills. We wish for good health so we have the freedom to engage with our hobbies and be with our friends. When we wish for money, it's usually to pay those bills or fund those hobbies. We wish for cars or boats, vehicles which open up the world to us, giving us the freedom to roam. When people wish for flight or invisibility, what they're really asking for is freedom to slip the surly bonds of earth and touch the face of God. There's an organization in the US called the Make-A-Wish Foundation. It visits children with grave illnesses and asks them what they wish for. While they receive donations, obviously they have limited resources, but they try to fulfill every wish they can. And many celebrities, people with immense power and privilege, will visit with those children who wish to meet them. Now, whether those celebrities are paid for those appearances or if they do it purely out of the goodness of their heart is not publicly known, but at the very least, they give their time. And the people who work for that foundation have chosen to spend their lives trying to grant the wishes of others. And it's not just Make-A-Wish. There are many charitable and volunteer organizations across the world. People work at soup kitchens or homeless shelters or volunteer firefighting brigades. Many people choose to spend what power they have giving hope and health and freedom of choice to others. Whenever you donate a Christmas present or volunteer for the Boys and Girls Club or even just hand a 20 to a beggar on the street, you are granting someone's wish. We can all be wish granters for one another, and often are. And I think that's a pretty heartening thought to know, that most people in the world want to help others, and I wouldn't wish it any other way. I am, as ever, sincerely grateful to my Patreon patrons, including but not limited to Gurgi85, Jinx KB, Savannah Mighty Zebra, Tony Houst, Bewilder Eye, Jekko, Sugar Cubed Glider, Lord Christine, Andrew T, Agent Shifter, Husky Trent, Lemon Lamb, Laura, Aspadites, That Gay Duck, Sugar Snap Kaylee, Pandora the Omnipresent, Gild, Gilded Dragon, The Art Gremlin, Acorn Hunter, Roxanne Gilling, Slayer by Proxy, and Jacob Schaller. This content is sponsored by viewers like you. It's only $5 a month or 10 if you want me to say your name at the end here. I've also announced some patron stretch goals at which I will make some fun music videos. Either way, join me next time as we poke at the limits of the canon with The Nightmare Before Christmas.